Well, IU fans, hey, the Hoosiers are 2-0. Florida Gulf Coast was a nail biter. The Army was a nail biter. And I think everyone would agree that as we sit here on Monday night, the Indiana Hoosiers have more questions than answers. They've got more problems than solutions. And Matt and I watch both of these games, every second of them. We've got some thoughts. We're going to dive into the Florida Gulf Coast game, the Army game, summarize all of that with our recap and our thoughts and our observations, and then conclude this episode with a little preview of Wright State on Thursday night before the Empire Classic. That's all coming your way and so much more here on episode 314, the Pi Day episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Monday night, November 13th, 2023, where I'm your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, I mean, it's 2 wins, which, a lot of teams, shout out Louisville, shout out St. Mary's, shout out a few others. You can't really say that. Michigan State, you can't really say they got 2 wins without losing. But I don't know where you want to begin. Just what are your initial thoughts from IU's first 2 games where fans are generally frustrated with how things went over those 80 minutes?
Fans are generally frustrated, and they're rightfully frustrated, right? There are times at which a fan base can get riled up, and it can be seen as a bit over dramatic, a bit out of pocket, an exaggeration of reality. There is no exaggeration of reality when you are only up 1 point on KenPom 336 at halftime. Okay, that is a reality that you don't want to be in. Now, again, it is the second game of the season. I understand that.
And it was tied with 3:44 to go.
Exactly. It's a close game with KenPom 346 or whatever the heck they were. And I think they're a little bit higher now because they gave us a good game. But either way, this Indiana team is right now playing like a high-level mid-major team, which might sound good to you. But when it comes to playing in a major conference, that's not good enough. It's good enough to win games in March and go on a bit of a run. It's not good enough to get to March in a major conference, right? And put a consistent season together. There are very few mid-majors. I mean, are we considering Gonzaga a mid-major at this point?
No.
St. Mary's a mid-major at this point. There are very few teams that aren't in the Power 6 that can consistently compete at a national level. And if they do, there's a very specific reason for why they do. It's usually the coach.
Right.
And right now, I just brought up coaching. We can talk about the coaching of this team. This team looks unprepared, unserious.
It's crazy.
The roster looks taped together with the worst store brand duct tape you've ever found, right? This is not Ace Hardware duct tape. This is
shout out Ace Hardware. Yeah,
this is the back of the back of Home Depot in the dumpster.
Dumpster tape. Yeah,
that's got mulch on it, right?
knockoff tape.
Yeah. It's not the real Flex Seal that they're using to put this roster together. It's some sort of monster, hybrid. Just it's phony and it's frustrating. And it's frustrating, and the team's play is phony. Like I said, this team is going to have to on a space yesterday, and this team has to play like rats to win games.
Why isn't that happening?
They have to rat it up. You can go and watch Michigan play. And they play beautiful.
I watched Army and Florida Gulf Coast play.
Yeah, teams can play beautiful basketball, and win games. This team cannot do that because of who they are, just from a roster.
Yeah.
You don't have a 3. Your best lineup is 3 guards and 2 forwards.
Mm-hmm.
Your 2 forwards are all either 4s or just slightly undersized 5 men.
Yeah.
Your guards, none of which are alphas, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't classify. Xavier Johnson is the closest thing to one, but he's
the least of my concerns.
Yeah. Cups is a freshman that looks like he's still in middle school, and is out there playing his heart out. CJ Gunn,
Caleb Banks. What are we getting?
CJ Gunn got the most
Anthony Walker
from one 3-pointer made in an exhibition last year. Because Ant and I watched that together and said this guy's going to be really.
He had a really good first 3 or 4 games last season, and whatever improvement Mike Woodson was expecting, just hasn't been there yet. Now it's been a couple games. Okay. I just, if you're asking me, is this a team figuring things out because it's a lot of new faces and they're working through chemistry and that's part of college basketball? I have a tough time buying that argument. I think that's being thrown around out there like, hey, everyone, get off the ledge. This team is figuring out who they are. They're trying to work with each other. Hey, you know what? Xavier Johnson has never played with Khalil Ware before. Mackenzie Mgbako hasn't played in college basketball before, et cetera, et cetera. That to me that argument does not hold much water because every team in college basketball is going through that. Army has a first-year head coach. Their freshman guard dropped a career high yesterday after scoring no points against Stonehill. Chef Curry on the Army version, military version. And so it's not just Indiana that's figuring out how to play with each other. Okay. The fact of the matter is I can understand that game against Florida Gulf Coast being a little bit tricky over the course of 40 minutes. Matt and I said that going into the game, but Army was one where you should have taken those lessons learned from Florida Gulf Coast and all 11 available scholarship players should have taken the court with their pants on fire. And whether that's the coach's responsibility or the player's responsibility, I'm not sure. It's a split obligation. But at the end of the day, the Indiana you saw in the final 4 minutes was drastically different than the one you saw in the first 36. Mm-hmm. And there's no explanation for that. They were sleepwalking through the early part of that game. And yeah, they're learning Mike Woodson's offense. Sure, they're learning Indiana's defensive system, but there's so much more to playing with an edge, playing with that extra killer instinct, playing with that pace that makes you, that half-court pace that makes you a good Big Ten team compared to a bad one. We didn't see any of that. Indiana looked lethargic early. Defensively, they're confused. If you just listen to the players, there was way more communication at the end of the game on the court than there was in the early part of the game. You can just listen to the players' voices. The BTN mics caught a lot of that. Yeah. So what I'm greatly concerned about is that this team wins a couple of games here, but Wright State's going to be a tough opponent. The Empire Classic is going to be brutal, except for Louisville. All I'm saying is the Hoosiers have a lot of issues right now. I have moved my position on this team based on what I saw the first 2 games. I thought this team was an NCAA tournament team at the start of the season. They're talented. They've got a lot of good players, but a couple of games of data have come in and I am not convinced. This is a 15-15 team according to KenPom. That's the way they're projected the rest of the way. They don't have KenPom doesn't have the Texas Louisville game in the second game of the Empire Classic yet because we don't know who the winner is. KenPom has it at 15-15. I may be a little bit more optimistic, but 16-15 doesn't get you into the NCAA tournament. 17-14 doesn't get you there. Indiana has a lot of work to do in order to get to March Madness. Matt, I think there are a couple of ways we can go with this. If you want to call out half-court offense, be my guest. What has happened to Mackenzie Mgbako in general? Where is the effort and intensity on this team? What happened to the bench? I mean, let's start with Mgbako. This is a 5-star player who chose Indiana over Kansas, decommitted from Duke. Why hasn't Indiana gotten more out of him through the first couple regular season games after a solid exhibition?
Well, he just doesn't look comfortable against high-level competition. Teams are forcing him to go to his weak hand instead of letting him go to the right. When he shoots the ball, he's forcing it. He doesn't have separation from his man, right? When you look at when he plays defense, he's completely and utterly lost. So either, in my opinion, when you see a player like this, either A, he's not paying attention in practice. He's just like not paying attention at all, completely slacking off, just not doing his thing, or practice is bad. Right? It's either one or the other. And I think it would probably be more the first version of that, right? Where he's kind of taking a step back in practice. He's not preparing as much as he should. He's not looking at the game plan. He's not watching defensive tape. That's a freshman thing, right? That happens with freshmen all the time because they're not only just trying to get used to college basketball, they're trying to get used to college in general, right? And then you add in the fact that he's, kind of getting into fights with Taco Bell employees. That leads to some distractions on and off the court. And I've heard some rumors and some things, some stuff behind, through some grapevines about, he might not have the coolest of heads in practice either. Right. And so again, he's trying to figure who he is, where he belongs,
adjusting to college,
how college works, how college basketball works. And so he's going to be a work in progress. Now, am I surprised that he only has 6 points through 2 games? Absolutely. I was so ready for him to come in and score about 8 points per game. And for that to be the minimum output on a night. Like, for instance, I would assume that later on this year, the worst performance he's going to give us is 6 points per game. But he has 6 points over 2 games and barely played any minutes at all in the second half of both games. Right. And I think that also comes down to the fact that he is being played out of position. He is not a 3.
I agree.
You watch him play, he is not a 3. When he plays defense against smaller teams like Army, he can't guard a single person he has matched up with that isn't the big man, right? So he is not a 3. Malik Renew is not a 4, in my opinion. Malik Renew is a 5. But the problem is Renew and Ware are your 2 most important players.
I would say Johnson.
I think Johnson's 3rd, honestly. Now with the emergence of Gabe Cupps, you can kind of say, all right, Xavier Johnson on a night that you're not playing well, let's put the ball in Gabe Cupps' hands more. Let's put the ball in Trey Galloway's hands more. But you don't have anybody else that can go and get you a bucket when the offense breaks down. Ware can do that, right? And he'll do some freaky mid-range BS.
Right.
And make
the Jokic style. Yeah.
Renew can just bully somebody into the post. We saw that last night. He ended up going to the free throw line and kind of icing the game there because he got a one-on-one matchup down low with the big from Army, and he just booty balled his way. Moves. He just booty balled his way into the post, and they had to foul him. Like they had to because he had post position. He's stronger. He's got the better. He's got a hook shot he can go to. He's got a little bit of a whoopsie doo. Right under the basket he can hit. Right, and he's shown this year that he can kind of hit with his left hand and his right hand in the post now, which is something that really, Trace Jackson Davis didn't show all that well when he was at IU.
It's true. And you're seeing a little bit of that up and under too. I think Indiana's got to make a change to the lineup.
He's got to make a change to the lineup. But Mgbako is behind Ware in importance, behind Renew in importance. Can't play the 5, so he's behind Sparks there.
Yeah. I think
So
Mgbako's got to come off the bench.
he's number 4, right? In a system where you can only really play 3, and then they want to play Anthony Walker there, which
that's been a struggle.
I didn't have stock on Anthony Walker.
Yeah.
A lot of people after the exhibitions bought some Anthony Walker stock. I'm telling you, as not a financial advisor, sell. He doesn't do anything on offense. He is a net negative actually on offense because he can't shoot.
Yeah.
And then on defense, he's just as lost as Mgbako, but he's 4 years older than him. Right? So with Mgbako, I can kind of be like, all right, you're still a freshman. You're gonna make mistakes, right? It's fine. You're gonna learn from your mistakes. Anthony Walker is the player that he is supposed to be, just like Xavier Johnson is the player that he is supposed to be. You're not going to get any better or any worse from what you can see from the results of his play from the first couple of games. Right. You know, the first half of the last game, the only reason Indiana was winning was because of Xavier Johnson. And to be honest, the only reason they won the first game was largely due to Khalil Ware, Gabe Cupps, and then Xavier Johnson's defense down the stretch.
It's hard to watch.
Nothing Anthony Walker has done in the first 2 games has led to any winning at all. In fact, I'm pretty sure he's a net negative when it comes to plus or minus.
He is. CJ Gunn is worst on the team at -15. Walker's at -14.
Exactly. And those are the 2 worst players that have played so far for Indiana. Now, I think CJ Gunn, I think there's still something there that can be worked out, but you got to run plays for him. Just like with what I'll ask for Mgbako is you got to get them shots early on in the game, like first or second possession.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
They come in to get them settled, right? It's like a quarterback, right? If you run the ball every single down for the first 2 series of the game,
sure,
and then you go to a drop back pass on drive 3, your quarterback has no rhythm. He hasn't really had to read the defense yet.
Or if you pass the ball all game and then run 3 plays in overtime with the game on the line, if you get my drift.
We're not going to talk about that. I thought we were safe here.
It's just, it kind of disrupts the rhythm of the offense when everything is on the line.
Yeah, that's just bad coaching.
I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, Matt. It's funny because right now there aren't too many positives to lean on. We'll discuss some of them as we go here. We have already, but Bob Knight, right? Coach Knight was a disciplinarian, and right now this team needs that more than ever. And all I'm saying is, if Mike Woodson wants to emulate Bob Knight's coaching methods in a modern day capacity, and really guide this team, mold them, teach them to become better basketball players. This is the opportunity for that. I think the last couple of years, you've had a lot of older guys. You've had Trace, you've had Race, you had Miller Kopp, you had others as well. Parker Stewart was old when he was at Indiana.
Yeah, he was.
This team needs Mike Woodson's coaching to the max. And they've got to shut up and they've got to listen to everything that he says, along with Coach Hunter and Coach Walsh and Coach Roseman, because Mike Woodson's got a lot of work to do with this basketball team. They're talented. They're capable. They have potential to do really good things. But this is a situation where, Xavier Johnson said it pretty well. You've got to play hard. You've got to play well for Coach Woodson. And Mike Woodson's got to coach his tail off between now and the end of the season. And that, I think, starts with going scorched earth with this starting lineup. I think you put Mackenzie Mgbako on the bench for the week. And I think you let Gabe Cupps positively reinforce his level of play from the first couple of games. And I want to see a 3-guard starting lineup of Johnson, Cupps, and Galloway, along with Renew and Ware. You let You let Gunn and Mgbako come in off the bench as an electric sort of microwave scoring type option. And then you can sort of roll in the starters along with Mgbako or something like that as the game goes on, so that you can team up Mgbako with some other really good players on your team. I think that's the path you have to go. And if you want to keep Mgbako in the starting lineup, I think you have to put Cups in there and take out Renew. And that's going to be a move that I would disagree with when it's all said and done, just given the way Malik Renew has played so far. So one way or the other, I don't think you can have the same starting five. They started slow in the first 2 exhibition games. It's carried through into the 2 regular season contests as well. And again, there are some positives to discuss here. We're going to dive into that here in just a moment. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And hey, there have been a lot of really fun stories across the world of the Indiana Hoosiers here. But we're going to give our praise to the Indiana men's soccer team, who won the Big Ten men's soccer tournament after a really exciting run, culminating with a victory over Penn State at home in the Big Ten tournament championship. They completed a double, the regular season and the Big Ten tournament. Now, because of some struggles earlier in the season, they didn't get a national seed. So they will play a home game in the NCAA tournament in the first round and then travel for the second round of that tournament. Make sure you head over to the IU men's soccer page on the IU website or find them on Twitter to get all the details there. But the Hoosiers will host the first game of the NCAA tournament before hitting the road. They've made the NCAA tournament in 37 straight seasons. An incredible accomplishment for the team. And hey, shout out to Sam Sarver for that big goal against Penn State on Sunday afternoon. Matt, an important reminder, and this part is important. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself, who are all frustrated with the way Indiana has started the season. And again, a reminder, if you'd like to find us on social media, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. I think Mike Woodson's got to go scorched earth on the starting lineup. Bring some guys in off the bench. And frankly, with the way the bench is playing, with the way the bench has played, I'm not sure how much more time they can get. I liked your point as far as Anthony Walker. Not really sure what more he's contributing, especially if Peyton Sparks is healthier. I think he can get some more of those minutes. And at the end of the day, and you've heard me make this comment as we watch these games in real time, basketball is not a democracy. It's a dictatorship. And I'm not sure how many possessions Indiana can have the rest of the way without Xavier Johnson, and I mean the rest of the season, without Xavier Johnson and Khalil Ware playing 2-man basketball. And I know some people are going to sit here and go, what in the world are you talking about? You got to move the basketball. You got to spread it around. Look, Mike Woodson's an NBA guy, okay? And there were games when he was on the Knicks where Carmelo would, he would own the basketball. It would be his show. And you know what? The Knicks made the playoffs. Carmelo is a Hall of Famer. No one's going to dispute any of that. Every team is different. And I would say, getting that 2-man game going, and then Mgbako fills in some of those remaining shots. Malik Renew fills in some of those remaining shots. Gabe Cupps, Trey Galloway. We go from there. I think that's the way this has got to go. At the end of the day, Matt, Indiana, both offensively and defensively, are a mess in the half court right now. What do you think is the bigger problem? Do you think it's Indiana's half court execution on the offensive side, getting clean looks, or the crazy volume of open threes they've given up since the first exhibition game?
It's the defense. Because when we asked the team coming into the year what the strength of this team was going to be, they told you, we're going to play defense. We're gonna live and die by our defense. And it's like they have damn near killed themselves with this defense every single game. I'm watching 40% 3-point shooters for the other team wide open in transition, in the half court, in space,
ISO late in the shot clock, early in the shot clock.
And the thing that scares me the most was that in a lot of these instances, IU knew that the other team was going to shoot the three. It's late in the shot clock.
Yeah.
You've walled off the defender. They haven't done anything inside all game. So guess what's going to happen? They're going to shoot a three-pointer, right? That's
move
not
the ball,
surprising
find the
to
open
anybody.
shooter.
They're going to move the ball, find the open shooter. And then you have people like Mackenzie Mgbako, or you have people like Trey Galloway sagging off of a shooter with less than 5 seconds left in the shot clock.
Yeah.
Like this is not serious, right? This is unserious is what this is.
And then, by the way, when the team misses the three, guess who gets the offensive rebound?
The same team. Yeah.
I mean, Army yesterday alone had 7 offensive rebounds, and they actually had more offensive rebounds than Indiana did over the course of the game yesterday. Again, that's a team in the 300s in KenPom. And of course, as we remember, Florida Gulf Coast also beat Indiana in the offensive rebounding category.
So I was saying this yesterday, and Ant was a little bit confused when I first said it, but he came around and understood it. We are a team that plays big, but is actually small.
It's that's it. And you're a little bigger than you were last year because Khalil Ware is a legit 7-foot center.
Yeah, but he's small around the waist. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like
he's not Shaq, right?
Trace was a meaty boy who deserved all the attention in the world and could move people around. He could go toe to toe with Zach Edey downstairs, and Zach Edey's almost 300 something plus pounds, right? And so, is Khalil Ware going to be able to do that? Absolutely not. He's going to get put underneath the basket by Edey on almost every single possession. Indiana's going to have to double, and Purdue's going to be shooting open 3-pointers again, right? That's what's going to happen. Like the player that's going to play the 5 for Indiana that game is either going to be Malik Renew, who's shown to be one of IU's strongest, if not IU's strongest player, or IU's literal strongest weight room player, and Peyton Sparks.
Right.
Those are the 2 guys that are going to guard Edey. Khalil Ware's not going to do that.
Well, you got Donovan Clingan coming up Sunday. He's around the corner.
That's going to be the litmus test to see how far Ware has come.
How far Ware has come. I do agree with that. I thought you were going to say Indiana because Wright State is my only concern right now. I mean, Wright State is a legitimate basketball team with 3 very, very, very good players in
2
their
former Ohio State players.
A former Ohio State guy. We're talking about a separate player in Trey Calvin. That's the preseason Horizon League Player of the Year. We'll discuss more about Wright State coming up, but I do think the defense has like 1 or 2 quick fixes in order to clean things up. For example, I think communication can get a lot better. I think Indiana's intensity on the defensive side of the floor can get a lot better. From a half-court offense standpoint, there's a laundry list of things that need to improve. You know, you want to talk about, hey, is the pick and roll the best thing to do? Is getting Khalil Ware the ball on the low post the best thing to do? Is it the high post? What about Renew? High post or low post? Okay, who's able to space the floor? What exactly is Trey Galloway's role in the half-court offense this season? Where is Mackenzie Mgbako fit into all of this? What happens if you play 3 guards versus 2 guards? What happens when Peyton Sparks enters the game? What about CJ Gunn and Caleb Banks from a bench standpoint? Indiana's half-court offense is going to be a work in progress all season. I think the defense can work itself out quickly, even perhaps as quickly as Thursday's game against Wright State, where you communicate better, you play with some more intensity, you close out on the perimeter, lean on Renew and Ware down low to block shots, or Peyton Sparks when he's in the game. On the offensive side, Mike Woodson talks about limiting teams to 60 points. He's got to set a new goal of getting to 70 from an offensive standpoint, because I really don't know how frequently Indiana is going to crack that mark this season. It's 69 against Gulf Coast. It's 72 against Army. And those are 2 of your weaker opponents all year. I'm really not sure. The interesting thing will be Wright State in their season opener gave up 105 on the road. They lost. They didn't play well. It was Colorado State season opener also. The Rams scored 105. If Indiana gets to 80, I'll be surprised. So that's exactly the kind of conversation we're having here as far as the Hoosiers are concerned. If Mike Woodson wants to mix things up, as we've discussed, 3-guard starting lineup would help. And by the way, pick up the tempo, please. I want this team to become a faster paced offense, whether it's fast break points or whether it's getting shots early in the clock, early in the possession. Right now, Indiana's 303rd in the country in pace, according to KenPom. Pick it up, please.
Nithin, you don't like 5 straight dribble handoffs in a row on a possession?
I saw that too. That was really funny. Yeah, IU killed about 15 seconds of the shot clock right off the bat. Get the ball to a player quickly and fire off a shot fast. This team looks to be conditioned. They look to have athletic guys. They look to have guys that can run up and down the court. And you've got a couple of bench options that you can bring in any given evening to sort of spell those starters. Speed things up. So as a matter of adjustments, Matt, we've talked about Indiana perhaps going to 3 guards a little bit more. We've talked about Indiana picking up the pace offensively. Outside of personnel changes, is there anything else you would like to see Indiana do between now and Thursday's game against the Wright State Raiders? Would you like to do full court press, double teams, zone? No, that would be heresy.
I know. Okay. I talked about this yesterday during the game. They won't do it, but this team is actually built from a roster's perspective. When you don't have a small forward, your team can still be good on defense if you play a 2-3 zone. Like, just imagine
you've got long guards, right? When Cups is out of the game, you got long guards. You can
put CJ Gunn in there. You can put Trey Galloway at the top of the zone there with Xavier Johnson, and then at the bottom you have Khalil Ware kind of going for steals in the middle. And then you've got the 2 really long defenders that can come weak side or strong side in front.
And there's less to talk about, right? It's a zone, whether it's a 2-3 or a 1-3-1. It's a zone, right? Yeah. You got to just guard your area. I would take that, and I think all those conversations can be applied to Indiana playing more full court pressure to frustrate their opposing offenses, especially when it comes to a team like Wright State on Thursday. Maybe that's not something you deploy frequently against UConn. Obviously, with a bunch of skilled players now, including Cam Spencer, Stephon Castle, compared to last year, where they'll be a lot more comfortable in getting up and down the court. But honestly, I think Indiana will never play a zone as long as Mike Woodson's the head coach. But certainly, you're right in your analysis that this is a team with the personnel to make that happen. I would love to see Indiana play some more full court pressure. I think the length of these players can definitely help affect the game in that standpoint, especially if they get off to slow starts. What have we seen frequently in college basketball? Your team is maybe struggling, maybe slumping a little bit. Hey, that full court pressure can really wake them up, get them going over the course of those 40 minutes so that you don't bite your nails and clench your butt cheeks in the final 4 minutes against a 300 ranked Army team in quad 4. So, those are some things that I think Indiana can do in order to get better. Matt, look, we have to say, right? I mean, there's no question about it. Indiana's 2-0. It's not quite as bad as if they had dropped either one of those games. Gabe Cupps has been really good. Khalil Ware has exceeded my expectations. Xavier Johnson has shown quite a bit from an on the court and off the court standpoint. What are 1 or 2 positives among those players that you really want to call out here that Indiana really needs to rely on the rest of the way?
I mean, Indiana doesn't win that game without Xavier Johnson and Khalil Ware. And that's why we talked about the 2-man game, right, between the 2 of them, because they were the only 2 really playing the game yesterday, to be honest. I would say the other positive is Gabe Cupps. I thought he's been really awesome.
I love watching him play.
He hit a timely 3 yesterday to kind of put it on ice. He took a dumb one earlier, but that's fine. I'll live with one dumb one if he hits the next one.
A big mid range too, right? I thought he had mid range.
Big mid range as well. Yeah. And then it's just his defense is so important. So important for this team. There's many times last night, I probably like 3 or 4 times, honestly, that Army had a possession that was on the fast break, and he worked his ass off to get back, and he either fouled the guy or he got a steal, right? And that's what I want to see, right? That's what I want to see out of him. Is those hustle plays, and that's what's going to get him in the starting lineup, in my opinion, is because you watch Mgbako play defense, right? I'm watching a replay that Tony Andranya just tweeted of all of Army's.
Really good follow, by the way, on Twitter. Yeah.
All of Army's 3-point makes. I think 3 of them are because of Mgbako literally walking to the shooter.
It's shocking. And I think,
like,
look,
when you bench doesn't do that.
When you bench a player, it's not necessarily like, it's not an insult. It's not something that should be taken like an absolutely piercing criticism by a player. A lot of times, if you get put on the bench, it's something the coach does. You want to see if the player responds. You want to see if the player comes back at you. You want to see if maybe watching the start of the game can help that player sort of get more comfortable as the game goes on. You're absolutely right. And again, it's not all on Mgbako. There were a number of other Hoosiers that struggled to close out beyond the arc, but Gabe Cupps is not one of them.
Nope. No, he is not. Even though there's a couple of threes hitting his face, a lot of times it was a miscommunication between either Mgbako, Trey Galloway, or Anthony Walker, and then Cupps, who's a freshman, which I'll live with that if you give me the hustle on the other end, right? And you give me the grit and the hustle that he does. Like, Mgbako doesn't do that, right? Like, on the other end, he hit I think a tough jumper yesterday. Yeah, and that was his 2 points.
Yeah, it was off a curl. It was off a preset motion.
He came off the
pin down. He came off the pin down, hit a nice mid ranger. But they need to figure out what works and what doesn't as far as Mackenzie Mgbako is concerned. And I think a good first step would be to bring him in as a 6th man
off the bench,
and reward Gabe Cupps for his strong start to the season. Who's our best player on this team, Matt? When the season's all said and done, who do you think is the best player on the 23-24 Indiana Hoosiers when it's all said and done?
Well, let's see. I think if you would ask me the question for the season, I would have said Xavier Johnson. Because he's the most experienced player on the roster. But from what I've seen from Khalil Ware, I don't think it could be anybody but Ware.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't really disagree with you too much. I think there's really one of 2 answers. If you want to argue Xavier Johnson, because he's a starting point guard, and so far he hasn't done anything to disappoint. I understand. Especially from a defensive side, it's been nice to see Xavier Johnson do some big things, especially as the tone setter for this team from a leadership standpoint. I think it's Khalil Ware, and I would be pleasantly surprised if it was someone else by the end of the season. As far as I'm concerned, he set a career high in rebounds in game 1. He set a career high in points in game 2. He barely turns the ball over. Which, as he gets more usage, perhaps that happens, but I'm willing to take that risk in order to get there. To me, Khalil Ware is someone that I've been so happy to see over the course of the first 2 games in the regular season, and of course the other couple exhibitions. I'm curious to hear what you all have to say. Drop something in the comments, drop a note in the comments if you disagree with anything that we've said so far. Or if you feel like someone else might be Indiana's best player when it's all said and done. I'd love to hear what you have to say. We have a Wright State preview coming up, and then one final piercing question about this IU men's basketball team here in just a moment. But first, it's time for a social media shout out. And just a real quick reminder, folks, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you follow our stuff across the different social media channels. Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. You can find us at Indiana HQ as well as the Hoosier Sound. Man, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. We just posted earlier today some reposted some quotes as it relates to Tom Allen's press conference from earlier today. A note from Pro Football Focus about Brendan Sorsby and Donovan McCulley. Whenever the Hoosiers do big things in the pros, you can find us there. We're always updating you with the most recent information as far as men's soccer, women's soccer, volleyball, baseball, softball, you name it. One-stop shop for IU sports. You can find us there. Matt, on Thursday night at 7 o'clock on Big Ten Network, the Wright State Raiders come to Assembly Hall. They're a team in the mold of Florida Gulf Coast. So if you thought Florida Gulf Coast was a solid mid-major team, that's exactly what Wright State is as they come into Assembly Hall on Thursday night. They did lose to Colorado State on the road 105-77 in their opener. They have a hell of a mid-major matchup as they host Toledo on Tuesday night before they come to Assembly Hall on Thursday. I would highly recommend tuning in and watching that one if you either just want to know more about Wright State or
basketball.
If you're a college basketball fan, you just want to watch a couple of good mid-major teams that are in the NCAA tournament play each other here on November 14th. Wright State has three very, very good players in their starting lineup. Trey Calvin, preseason Horizon League Player of the Year. He dropped 30 plus against Colorado State in the season opener. Tanner Holden, former Ohio State Buckeye. He hit a buzzer beater for Ohio State last year to beat Rutgers. Controversial one, but it counted. It's all that matters. After 3 seasons at Wright State, he went to Columbus for a year, now back with Wright State. He scored in double figures in their opener as well. And don't overlook Brandon Knoll. He got second team preseason Horizon League votes. He was on the second team as far as the preseason Horizon League was concerned. And in that game against Colorado State, Knoll scored as he scored 8 points, but he's a little bit of a do-everything guy. 4 rebounds, 3 assists, couple block shots as Wright State visits Bloomington. This is a 7 Eastern tip. KenPom projects Indiana to win 81-70. Matt, Wright State is the 163rd team in the country per the KenPom ratings, but this has all the makings of a trap game before Indiana goes to Madison Square Garden for the Empire Classic. What do the Hoosiers have to do to ensure they come out of this game with a win?
Got to prepare, and they got to hope that Wright State's got some early season jelly legs from playing tomorrow and then playing on Thursday, right? That's a tough turnaround for even NBA players, right? They don't like playing back-to-backs. They don't playing and traveling after one night. Good news is Toledo's not really that far from Bloomington compared to what they played before, which was Colorado State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what I have to say about this team is yes, they're 0-1. But they played in Colorado at Colorado State, who's a very good basketball team. Mm-hmm. And they just didn't play defense, which sounds great for Indiana, but I don't think that's going to be an issue when you watch Indiana do 7 straight dribble handoffs in a single possession, right? Like, Indiana's offense already sucks, so this team doesn't really have to play great defense. It just has to play subpar defense to match up with subpar offense. Trey Calvin's a scorer. He had 33 points in 34 minutes on 4 of 7 from 3.
6-foot guard, absolute dynamite scorer.
Yep, absolute dynamite scorer. I only took 5 free throws, made all 5, but only took 5 free throws, ended up with 33 points. That's incredible for the college game.
20 points per game last season for Calvin as well, playing in the Horizon League with some really incredible games. You go and look at his game by game from last year. Just some incredible performances in the season opener against Davidson, a good mid-major team. He had 37. And so, if you're like, oh, what could this guy do? Well, that's your answer. Interestingly, though, Calvin only pretty much the main 3-point shooter on that team. You don't get too many threes outside of that.
Brandon Knoll shoots them, and so does Tanner Holden. Mm-hmm. So far this year, Holden's attempted 2, Knowles attempted 8.
Right.
Or sorry, 1.
But if Indiana goes up against them defensively,
right. Those are the only 3 guys that have taken threes, by the way, on their entire roster. Or made threes. Those are the only guys that have made threes on their roster. actually attempted. Yeah, I'm looking at their. No. Alex
Huberets.
Huberets
Huberets.
hasn't hit one yet,
Huberetsy.
but he's due to hit one. No, I'll say this: Trey Calvin, while he's really good, doesn't scare me that much. I'm going to be completely honest because I think Xavier Johnson will match up with him, and he'll take that matchup personally. And Trey Calvin will probably still end up with 20 points, but it'll be less than what he's currently averaging.
Yeah, and you're hoping it's on 25 shots, right?
The guy that scares me the most on this team is the next two guys, actually. It's Tanner Holden, the Ohio State transfer, and Brandon Knoll, who is a forward that can shoot threes. I don't know who's going to guard Brandon Knoll, right? Because this team has shown an inability to guard 3-point shooters, but especially guard 3-point shooters that are from the wing position. And then Tanner Holden, I don't know who guards him. I don't know if there's a guard on this roster that's good enough to match up with him one-on-one. Like Cups as a freshman. Do you really want
Galloway?
Galloway, maybe, but even Galloway so far this season really hasn't looked the same defensively that he did last year when he was put in a system where he could kind of get beat off the dribble a little bit because he had such good rim protection behind him, which I think he needs to go back to trusting the rim protection behind him and trusting Kel'el Ware. And okay, I get beat on a drive here, but let me try to maybe slow him up a little bit, give him a little bit of a legal hip check, so that Ware can kind of rotate off his guy, kind of float off his guy, and challenge a shot at the rim. I don't know if this team has the guy to do that. And Tanner Holden only attempted 4 free throws, made 6 shots that game. I think he'll probably take more than 12, which he did in the Colorado State game against Indiana, because he's going to be open, right? And he's going to get open shots, and he's a guy that can hit them.
Yeah. No, he is very much a guy that can hit them when they're open. He's not going to be intimidated by the spotlight at Assembly Hall either, not by any means. Wright State finished last season 197th in KenPom. The interesting note is that they love to play fast. And so if you want that kind of test for the Hoosiers, last year, Wright State had a tempo in the top 25 of college basketball. Of course, we've only had one game of sample size here. They have a top 50 tempo, but of course, we're going to pay close attention to that Toledo contest on Tuesday night before Wright State visits Assembly Hall. I think you made really good points about Xavier Johnson getting that matchup against Trey Calvin. It's fascinating in this day and age to see a player play at the same school for 5 seasons. That's what Trey Calvin has done. He has not explored life in a high major program. He would have gotten interest if he did that, if he pursued that route. Tanner Holden, fascinating because he spent 3 years at Wright State, went to Ohio State, and then came back. You, by the way, do have a little bit of Indiana flavor on this Wright State roster. Andrew Wallage from Greensburg is on this Wright State roster, and he gets a little bit of playing time there for the Raiders. So that'll be nice for him, I'm sure, returning to the state of Indiana. Every player on this Wright State team has Midwest roots. So, that's an interesting thing to have in mind here as they keep going right along. Head coach Scott Nagy has been at the helm for Wright State for multiple seasons here. I believe it's 6 seasons now for Nagy. No, that's a correction. It's 8 now for Nagy as he keeps things going in the Horizon League for the Raiders. They got a bunch of old guys. They got a bunch of guys who know what they're doing. Guard heavy offense. A really good test for Indiana, especially when you consider that this Wright State team is going to pick up the tempo, play fast against the Hoosiers. Matt, I said there was a piercing question for your team. So usually I ask about final thoughts, but instead of that, let's just wrap up with this. You've seen Indiana play a couple of games here. This is our weekly podcast poll over at the Hoosier Sound, and it's drawn a lot of interest already. Based on what you've seen, Matt, through the first couple of regular season games, how far do you think IU goes this year? Do you think they miss the NIT, make the NIT, make the NCAA tournament and lose in the first game, or win a game or more in March Madness?
the way they're playing right now. They might upset a few people down the stretch here. You know, in February and early March, they might play up to the level of some teams. But I just feel like they're going to be so far down the bubble, and they're going to need so many different dominoes to fall, and all the other conferences and people to lose early in their conference tournaments, that at the end of the day, I think they're going to dig themselves a hole here in the non-conference because they're not prepared enough that they can get out of. And it sucks to say that. Like, I'm going to be right about football. I said football was going to go 3-9. They're going to go 3-9, and they're going to lose almost all of the games that I thought they would. They could win this weekend, and they could win the next weekend. But either way, they're still not going to make a bowl game, which is just terrible. And I think the same thing with this basketball team. They are missing a major piece. They're missing a Jordan Dingle. They're missing a Dalton Connect. They're missing a Chris Ledlam.
Yeah.
If you had gotten two of those three guys, and an emphasis on Dingle and Connect, if you had gotten two of those three guys, this team would be a Final Four caliber ceiling team. Like their ceiling would be a trip to the final. Can you imagine Xavier running out a lineup of Xavier Johnson, Jordan Dingle, Dalton Connect, Malik Renew, Clell Ware? Because we were really close to that happening, right? And then you have Trey Galloway and a Mackenzie Mgbako coming off the bench, and you don't have an Anthony Walker in the team. And Anthony Leal's probably a preferred walk-on at this point. But, you know,
I hear what you're saying.
We were really close to having this roster fully fleshed out, and it got absolutely uprooted, demolished.
The
Battleship
right?
stunk.
Portal combat.
Yeah, Portal. Yeah, we got Portal combat and KO'd. We got Randy Orton KO'd.
By the way, I lost you for a second right at the start there. So what was your answer to the question? I heard the explanation.
I don't think this is a March Madness team.
Okay, so and
I kind of, you know, I explained it, but they're gonna dig themselves too far of a hole.
I heard the explanation. Okay, I'm gonna agree.
Yeah,
I don't think
trust me, we want to disagree.
I would love to see this Indiana team get their name announced on Selection Sunday. And to be fair, there are winnable games in the Big Ten. I don't know if Indiana's going to ever be a double-digit underdog in a Big Ten game outside of the Mackey game. You know, possibly. Of course, you don't go to Breslin this upcoming Big Ten slate. I think at the end of the day, this Indiana team needs to find a win over UConn, Auburn, or Kansas. And I've seen Auburn against Baylor. I have a tough time seeing how the Hoosiers come away with that one. And if they do, we will look stupid on this podcast. We will.
I love looking dumb. Yeah,
we will admit
I'll
it.
take it.
I thought midway through last season, Indiana was not an NCAA tournament team. I was there at Bryce Jordan Center when Penn State hit 23s on Indiana's face. And I said, there's no way. There's no way they're digging out of this hole. The one advantage Indiana had last year was they had banked wins at Xavier and home against North Carolina. Can Indiana get one of those in the three big games they have in this slate? Neutral UConn on Sunday, neutral Auburn in Atlanta, home Kansas. Can Assembly Hall work its magic? That's what we're going to be paying attention to. If we look at the answers over on the Hoosier Sound Twitter podcast poll, it's a close race. Make sure you go and cast your vote if you have not already. It's taking a minute here to show up on my phone, but here we go. 42% of you think Indiana does record at least a win in the NCAA tournament. 20% of you say the Hoosiers lose their first game in the NCAA tournament, which means 62% of you think Indiana makes March Madness. 25% agree with me and Matt. in that Indiana makes the NIT, and then 13% of you says Indiana misses the NIT altogether. A lot of votes have come in already. Zach Farmer says he hopes he's wrong, but he doesn't even see NIT. Alec Pena says, realistically, I think this is an NIT team if they can learn to be a cohesive unit. Struggling to beat Army isn't a good look. We did get some optimism from Hoosier Colt 1986, who says, we'll get it going. Not worried. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 314 show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find everything in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation. We will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers.